We now continue as we talk about your wellness. Joining me on the line is Simone Momplé, and today we are talking about dealing with trauma. We know that there's so much that's been happening around the world. Last week we started our conversation about checking in, and with the progression of things over the last couple of days, I think has led itself to us connecting and wanting to discuss how we deal with trauma. Good afternoon, Simone. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to the Only Date That Matters Lunch with Khanya.
Good afternoon, Khanya. How are you?
I'm in a positive space. I'm good.
That's good.
Yes. So let's just jump into it, Simone. Last week, of course, we laid the foundation. We were speaking about the importance of checking in and just establishing what it is that is happening in and around you and how you are responding to it. And today I'd like us not necessarily to delve and dwell on what has been happening, but rather how we can equip and empower ourselves as individuals and as families and as groups to deal with some of the traumatic events that happen around us, that happen to us, that we get to explore or to experience rather at various parts or times of our lives. So that's what I'd like us to chat about today.
Yes, definitely there is so much going on, and I think it just gets more every day. I think that what I want to tap into is to say that, of course, there's this unrest that is happening that makes us feel uneasy, but then we also notice that the people have their own opinions, and then people have opinions about other people's opinions, and we end up sort of snowballing, without control. So this made me realize that I think it's a matter of control, that we find ourselves not understanding where we are because everything is just happening around us. But where do you fit into it? Now, yesterday I was driving around Cape Town, and all of a sudden I saw snow on the mountains. And I didn't even know that we had snow because the news is so filled with everything else that's happening that I didn't even notice it. And when I did notice it, I realized, wow, my focus has just been so focused on what was happening on the socials, on the radio, that I didn't even notice how beautiful our mountains looked, and I think this sort of makes me think, how do we redirect our focus? Yes, last week we spoke about checking in with ourselves, but this time, how do we understand what is happening in ourselves in this space again? So, yes, we need to be aware of what's happening. Of course, not to be ignorant about what's happening, but how are we emotionally and mentally? We don't have to stay there, mentally and emotionally. As you're saying, you're doing good, you're in a good space. So that means that you have found something that is helping you gain control around you. And I think that that's where we need to focus.
When you speak of control, to what extent? Because sometimes when you do try to control things too much, then you do, lead yourself down a path of disillusionment because there's certain things that we can't control. So to what extent do we speak about control? If you can just tap into that and then share some, options of outlets to deal with when you've come to the realization that this is what I can control, and these are my options to balance myself or return to core, to a good space within what I can control.
Yes, definitely. So, of course, control, I don't mean it in a negative way. I'm looking at it from a sense of we currently feel like there's a loss of control, that we can't do anything about what's happening outside of ourselves. And I think in a psychological frame, we're always trying to gain control over something, so it feels like we have a handle on something. So my tip would be to don't give in and don't give up. Those are the two things. Don't give in to what's happening so that you end up snowballing, and don't give up on yourself. Focus on what is within your reach of control. Sort of bring it back to yourself. What can you control about what is happening? So, of course, we trying to get something outside of yourself to be different is also a sense of self-sabotaging, because you'll end up feeling more person's outside of you is not changing. And obviously you've heard the saying a lot, to say like you can only control your reaction to things. So as cliche as it sounds, it is so true, but before your reaction is your thoughts and your behavior. So what are you thinking, and what can you control about your thoughts? So it just takes one shift, it just takes one thing for you to shift that focus. And I think that was when I noticed the snow on the mountains, and I marveled in the greatness of this idea of snow on our mountains. It's really weird. It's a weird concept. And I said I've just snowballed into the idea of snow on the mountains. So that helped me to just shift one part of my focus. And then, of course, that changes your behavior, how you can work with things that's around you. I know that you also mentioned you just go offline for a while. That's something that also can help you. You can set a timer. There are also spaces online that you can find that are a little bit more peaceful. It takes something like Googling something about a YouTube video on how to find peace within ourselves, or just maybe Googling how to knit a scarf or something. Like, you don't even have to actually do it. It's just sort of activities that you can do that will just shift your focus, even if it's just for a little bit, so that you can find relief, so that you can find a way to get control again.
That is the voice of Simone Momplé. We are talking about dealing with the trauma right here on the Only Date That Matters Lunch with Khanya. Welcome to you. If you've just joined us, it's gone 31 minutes past the hour, 1 o'clock. Now, Simone, specifically when it comes to trauma, because there's so much that's happening. So if anybody was driving when some of the unfortunate activities took place, they will then obviously get triggered in those spaces, and not everyone, we know that there's been job losses, etc. So not everybody can afford to go and see a professional. How do you then empower, whether it is yourself or empower your family members or friends, to assist them in the journey of dealing with the trauma? Because another thing I find that in South Africa, and particularly in communities of color, trauma is suppressed. And we factually know that it will at some point need to manifest so that it can be dealt with, and it will keep on manifesting until it is dealt with. So what can people do, in their homes, in their cars, on a daily, to deal with the trauma that might be triggered? Some people right now are absolutely fearful, paralyzed by fear of going to malls because of what they've seen or what's been shared on social media, etc. What can they do?
Yes, I think you are tapping into something very, very important. So my advice, I'm not going to say advice, but I'd like to say some ideas of what people can do is still to kind of redirect that focus. But of course, you're sitting with these things and you physically are feeling the effects of the trauma, because in psychology they also say that when you experience trauma, we suppress it within our body. It sort of forms in our cells. This is the topic of embodiment I also tapped into last week. And what happens with that is, because we suppress it, we don't want to talk about it, and we leave it there within our bodies, those things actually come up for us when we don't expect it. Now, the trauma that they might be experiencing at this time might actually have been something they suppressed before. So it might not actually just be what is happening now. So you need to find a safe space, whether it is even in just a bathroom, that you can just get a space to just breathe. If you're feeling that maybe you're having some sort of a panic attack, the anxiety is building, those deep breaths that we mentioned last week also really help you just to calm down for that minute. Now, it might not work straight away, but it's important to understand that the deep breathing allows your cells, those effects of the trauma, to kind of be released. And of course, if you do not have the capacity to go and seek help in terms of counselling, of course we have those available services online that are free. But I think that finding somebody who you really trust, even if you haven't spoken to them in a long time, just to say, I just need a breather. Whether you are actually talking about what happened to you, whether you are talking about something that happened to you that was fun and enjoyable, to go just to again shift that focus.
And vent.
That would also, yes, and vent. And you need to be honest with the person and say, look, this is what I need. And of course, before you do that, also important to check in whether they can hold you in that space. Yes, so that you can say, are you able to hold me in the space? If they say no, then understand that can we both just vent, but understand that you're going to need some sort of containment. Okay, that's a psychological term, not a containment. You just need something that's going to bring you back to feeling peaceful again. So do what you feel sort of is necessary at the time. Also be aware of those emotions. Don't necessarily take it out on other people, especially young kids. They can definitely pick up these things, whether you're keeping quiet about, whether you're saying something or not. They can sense a lot of these things. So I think just be honest with the process. Talk about it as much as you can. And be honest, if you don't have somebody else, take a video of yourself. Things we can try.
Yeah, Simone, I think that was a very, very pertinent, powerful, statement that you made there, is that also check in with the person that you're venting to, if they can hold you in that space, because the very concern that you have about you, that you are, struggling with dealing, they might be feeling that way as well. Now, Simone, what if for those who are looking to get professional help and resources at the moment are limited, where can they find such opportunities, as you mentioned that there are resources available online?
Yes, I think you needed to try and I would say Google what is in your area. Maybe there's a clinic that offers free counseling within your area, or somebody that could pick up the phone and call you back. I know that SADAG is also available. They offer free counseling. That's the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. You can either message them, or you can call them. And then I also know that there are South African counseling services available. If you just Google that, you would find free services that you can contact as well. And I think also church organizations would also offer.
Yes. So thank you so much, Simone Momplé, speaking to us about our wellness in dealing with the trauma. Any last words or points of reflection, Simone, that you'd like to share?
Yes, last week's discussions that we had on checking in, as well as today, I am going to post some activities that people could try just to check in with themselves, but also to redirect focus. I'll be posting that on my socials on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. That is Simone Momplé on LinkedIn and Facebook, and Instagram is Simone the Dancer. And I think one thing that I learned this week, which I also posted online, was just to be fair. Be fair in as much as we are thinking about what is wrong and our problems, let us also spend some time thinking on what is good and our goals or our dreams. So let's try to balance that out as well.
Yeah. I mean, Simone, I have turned to Boss Baby. Boss Baby has been my release, because I did find myself a bit overwhelmed in various groups, social media, the sharing, things that are coming through, and it's very difficult to unsee what you've already seen. You know what I mean? Because people are.
Yes.
So I did find myself struggling through that, but Boss Baby has been my release. Thank you once again, Simone Momplé, speaking to us about our mental wellness and well-being. Simone, hopefully we'll catch you again next week when we talk wellness again. It's 38 minutes past the hour, 1 o'clock. My name is Khanya Sosibo. This is The Only Date That Matters, Lunch with Khanya on Radio Bob, the station with the mind of its own.